On this Monday night, the growing threat of anti-Semitism.
Canadians shouldn't have to fear terrorist violence.
The fears of a mass casualty attack and what the federal government is being urged to do. Protecting children from harmful and hateful content on the internet.
We've seen a wave of harm with no legal accountability.
The proposed new law and how politics is creeping in. New claims Alexei Navalny was about to be released in a prisoner swap, why an ally says a deal for his freedom fell through. And what a card!
They're floored.
The great unexpected find in a Regina home, scoring millions at auction.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We have reaction tonight to what Global News has uncovered about the threat from anti-Semitism in Canada. Last week, Global News aired a special report that included government documents obtained through the Access to Information Act, tracking how hate crimes and anti-Semitic rhetoric have risen since the attacks by Hamas on Israel last year. It is renewing questions over what's being done to combat anti-Semitism and to keep it from escalating. Caryn Lieberman has our top story tonight.
There have been hundreds of demonstrations in cities across Canada since the Hamas attack on Israel. The Birnbaums recently attended a pro-Israel rally in Toronto, and on their way home,
somebody pointed at my car with a flag on it and started yelling at me, "F you, I'm gonna F your mother," screaming at me, consumed with rage.
While anti-Semitic hate crimes were rising before October 7th, a series of strategic intelligence briefs obtained by Global News show the numbers have since spiked and that extremists motivated by the conflict could attack at large gatherings.
Canadians shouldn't have to fear terrorist violence in our streets.
The Integrated Terrorist Assessment Center predicted attacks could happen during protests or targeting diplomatic interests, cultural centers, or other symbols of Israeli or Palestinian interests in Canada.
Similar information surfaced very early on in European capitals, and there's a question about how long it took for this information to come to light here in Canada.
Last fall, the federal government announced $10 million to help Canadian communities at risk of hate-motivated incidents to help protect and strengthen security around their community centers and places of worship.
But there are questions about whether Canada is doing enough to stem the spread of hate, with some calling on the government to release information about potential threats more quickly.
One, it gives the security agencies and law enforcement a direction, somewhere that they can orient their efforts to. Two, it allows the affected community, in this case, the Jewish community, to adopt the right posture.
Moshe Birnbaum's wife, Natalia, who posted the faces of the Israeli hostages at the front of her office, now wonders.
My parents came here because they thought they were making a better life for us. And now looking at what's going on, it's like, well, is this going to get under control?
The briefs listed 8 possible targets of anti-Jewish attacks.
Would you now reconsider attending a large-scale demonstration?
Absolutely not. I would show up every single time. And if we just allow this to fester, it's just going to continue to get worse.
Caryn Lieberman, Global News, Toronto.
The American President Joe Biden said today he hopes a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war will be reached within a week.
My national security advisor tells me that we're close. We're close. It's not done yet. And my hope is by next Monday, we'll have a ceasefire.
So-called proximity talks have been underway in Qatar, both sides meeting mediators separately in the same city. Publicly, they remain far apart. The head of Hamas says it embraces the talks, but accuses Israel of stalling while Gazans die under siege. Israel's prime minister says he's ready for a deal, and it's up to Hamas to drop demands he describes as outlandish and from another planet. Food and medical supplies were parachuted into Gaza today by the Jordanian army. The supplies were released over 11 sites along Gaza's coast. Crowds gathered. Some of the boxes landed in the sea, forcing people to row boats to get them. Most of Gaza's population has been displaced by Israel's siege and don't have enough to eat. Amnesty International says Israel isn't following the International Court of Justice ruling to protect Palestinians and says it has woefully failed to provide Gazans basic needs. The Israel Defense Forces has released video of what it says was a targeted attack on a Hezbollah commander in southern Lebanon. It says it killed Hassan Hussein Salami, who was hit while traveling through a village. The federal government has introduced its long-promised legislation aimed at safeguarding Canadians from online exploitation and hate. It's called the Online Harms Bill, tackling issues such as online child endangerment and non-consensual sharing of intimate images. And there will be a new regulator to oversee social media services.
This bill will require platforms to do their part and to do better to keep people safe from harm and exploitation, especially our children. Failure to do so will have a price: significant monetary penalties.
Touria Izri is following this story for us tonight.
Online abuse can cause irreparable damage to children and their families.
I'm a mother whose little girl has been sexually abused and on account of the abuse has also become a victim of sexual exploitation. I'd also like to acknowledge and state that I may be one mother, but one of countless.
That's why the federal government has tabled a new online harms bill that child safety advocates say is long overdue.
In most countries around the world, as soon as you turn 13, we basically treat you online like you're an adult. And in the offline world, that would never occur.
Part of the bill includes a new digital safety commission and ombudsperson, so Canadians can file complaints.
We've seen a wave of harm with no legal accountability. So it's time. We need this type of legislation.
Last October, a 12-year-old boy from Prince George, BC, took his own life. He was the victim of online sextortion. Under the Act, social media sites must remove images of child sex abuse or intimate images shared without consent within 24 hours or face fines of up to $25 million. They also have an obligation to make websites more age-appropriate, which includes warning labels and features to block communication with strangers. This policy expert was part of public consultations and says most Canadians support more measures.
They had felt as though they had been part of a kind of social science experiment being run by big tech without the kind of oversight that Canadians expect when it comes to other forms of media.
The UK and Europe have similar legislation, but there are a lot of questions about what enforcement in Canada will look like and whether social media giants who fail to protect children will actually pay up.
Lots of detail here, Touria. And you might think that protecting children from online harm would be a nonpartisan thing, yet politics is creeping in here. How is it playing out?
Well, the legislation also includes adding hate crimes to the criminal code. Up till now, the offense was only considered an aggravating factor, but now it could carry a penalty of life in prison. But even before the bill was tabled, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre said he would not support it and accused the Liberals of censorship, saying Prime Minister Justin Trudeau can't distinguish between hate speech and speech he hates. Donna?
Touria, thanks. Hungary's parliament has cleared the path for Sweden to join NATO after nearly 2 years of intense negotiations. Just 6 of Hungary's parliamentarians rejected Sweden's accession. To admit new members to NATO, unanimous support from NATO countries is needed. Getting approval from the Hungarian parliament was the final hurdle. It's a blow to Russian President Vladimir Putin. NATO's Secretary General says Putin invaded Ukraine to, as he says, close NATO's door and deny Ukraine the right to choose its own path. Faced with Russia's aggression on their doorstep, European countries are beginning to ramp up their defense spending. And Canada's Prime Minister, wrapping up a visit to Ukraine and Poland, is defending how much Canada spends. Justin Trudeau met with Poland's Prime Minister, who says the Western world must rise to meet the global threat posed by Russia. Abigail Bimman is traveling with the Prime Minister.
Donna, Canada has long been criticized for not meeting its NATO defense spending target, 2% of GDP. Here in Warsaw, it's a much different story. Poland is gearing up to spend 4%, and in new comments from its defense minister, they're considering doubling that in the face of Russian aggression. Of course, Poland is also on Ukraine's doorstep.
I recognize Poland stepping up significantly in its own military spending, but so will Canada. We will continue to make sure that the women and men of the Canadian Armed Forces and the people around the world, our allies who rely on them, will continue to get the equipment and the support they need. everyone.
No commitment on any kind of timeline. The Prime Minister specifically referenced investments in NORAD in the Arctic as one example. The Polish Prime Minister was asked if he had been pushing Justin Trudeau to hit the 2% NATO target or for clarity on a timeline. Donald Tusk was reserved and diplomatic in his answer, referencing all NATO countries that are below 2%.
Sooner or later, every NATO country, and it's better that they do it sooner than later, that they spend the adequate amount of money for their and our own defense.
Prime Minister Trudeau was also asked about aid to Ukraine. While Canada has promised billions of dollars worth, including another $320 million for military aid announced on this trip, there have been delays. While visiting a Polish military base where Canadian soldiers train Ukrainians, on Sunday, Canada's defense minister acknowledged there have been challenges in getting what Canada has promised into the hands of Ukrainians, specifically a badly needed air missile defense system.
We will continue to purchase on the international markets equipment that Ukraine needs, like all our allies do as well. We are working closely with the American procurement system to get the NASAMS that we have purchased for Ukraine to Ukraine. We're accelerating the process of getting more light armored vehicles.
That missile defense system was purchased from the United States a year ago, but there's still no timeline for when that could be delivered either. Donna?
All right, Abigail Bimman in Warsaw, thanks. Was Alexei Navalny about to be freed from a Russian prison? Coming up, what a friend of the late activist is claiming. There's another twist in the mysterious death of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. A colleague of his claims he was days away from being released when he died in a Russian penal colony. Maria Pevchik posted a statement on YouTube saying Navalny was about to be exchanged for a Russian hitman serving a life sentence in a German prison.
Реализация этого плана заняла целых 2 года.
She says implementing this prisoner swap took 2 whole years. What she said has not been verified or confirmed. Pevchik claimed the Russian President Vladimir Putin changed his mind at the last minute because he couldn't tolerate having Navalny free. Redmond Shannon reports.
In the aftermath of Alexei Navalny's death, his wife said the world would soon learn why he died when he did. On Monday, Navalny's team released this video.
Navalny was supposed to be free in the coming days because we had achieved a decision on his exchange.
Navalny ally Maria Pevchik alleges the Russian security service hitman Vadim Krasikov, jailed in Germany for murder, would have been exchanged for Navalny, along with 2 unnamed US citizens who were also being held in Russia. But Pevchik claims Russian President Vladimir Putin had second thoughts and ordered Navalny be killed, unable to tolerate his biggest critic being freed a month before presidential elections.
Ich kann dazu jetzt auch nichts anderes antworten.
The German government refused to comment on the swap story. Among the 2 American citizens could have been Ottawa-born former US Marine Paul Whelan, a dual citizen Canadian-American.
No crime ever occurred. There is no evidence of a crime.
Whelan is 5 years into a 16-year sentence for spying. He says he is a political hostage. He recently told the BBC he felt left behind by Washington. And earlier this month, before Navalny's death, Putin had hinted that talks were ongoing to release US journalist Evan Gershkovich in a swap that would have involved the hitman Krasikov.
I do not rule out that the person you refer to, Mr. Gershkovich, may return to his motherland.
The Wall Street Journal reporter is being held on spying charges that he denies. Putin is not averse to prisoner swaps. In 2022, American basketball star Brittany Griner was freed in exchange for Russian arms dealer Viktor Bout. He had been imprisoned in the US. On Monday, the Kremlin denied allegations it had pressured Navalny's mother into holding a private burial. She received his body on Saturday. His team now says it is looking for a suitable venue to hold a public funeral. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Helping the unhoused ahead the persistent problem multiple Canadian cities are facing. In Saskatchewan, a second inquest began today related to the 2022 mass stabbing that killed 11 people in James Smith, Cree Nation and Weldon. This inquest is focused on how the killer, Miles Sanderson, died in police custody. Jurors heard RCMP Superintendent Devin Pugh recount the final hours of that three-day manhunt for Sanderson, detailing how police were alerted to and then pursued a vehicle the 32-year-old had stolen. Sanderson was arrested moments after police forced that vehicle off the highway. He went into medical distress and was pronounced dead at the hospital. The inquest is expected to hear from a dozen other witnesses. You can find them in cities across this country, tents and makeshift shelters where people are living. It's been described as a national crisis. Today was the deadline for people living in 5 encampments in Halifax to leave. Finding accommodations for everyone hasn't been easy. For some, the encampments offer a sense of community not found in a shelter. Heidi Petracek on the evictions and the struggle to help the unhoused.
I feel like it's really rushed and kind of forced on everyone.
The sentiment on Halifax's deadline for more than 100 people who've been living in tents in certain parks to leave. City officials said Friday 25 people were still left, like Jay Campbell, who plans to take his tent elsewhere.
People need to be more considerate when it comes to, they can just go live in a shelter when there's a lot of issues at those shelters.
The municipality insists it's finding resident spots at places like this former hotel turned shelter, rather than using force. As municipalities across the country struggle to address a persistent issue.
Nova Scotia has, smaller encampments than other provinces, and we really need to work together, province, municipality, all the NGOs to kind of really find the most dignified, healthy kind of spaces for folks.
The scene in Halifax, a contrast to recent evictions in other cities like Vancouver and Edmonton. Halifax is trying to avoid a repeat of the violence and arrests of similar evictions in 2021.
Ideally, we would be able to house them. Ideally, we would be able to say, here's a rent geared to income apartment that suits your needs. The problem is that we haven't had any of those units available for so long that it's resulted in mass encampments.
These spaces were municipal parks to begin with, and according to a statement from the city of Halifax, once those living here leave, these spaces will be closed to the public until further notice for what it calls remediation. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
Ontario is giving a $1 billion funding boost to post-secondary institutions. It will be providing $1.3 billion in extra funding to schools over the next 3 years to help stabilize their finances. Ontario also won't allow universities and colleges to increase tuition fees for in-province students for at least 3 more years. A government-commissioned report found that freeze, combined with low funding from the province, was posing a significant threat to the sector's financial stability. Rookie card reward next, the great find for a Saskatchewan family. No one said landing on the moon was easy. Japan's space agency has received a signal from its moon lander that launched last month. These are the only images Japan has of that spacecraft. It survived a sideways landing that left its solar panels facing the wrong way. The American lunar lander has a similar problem. These images show its descent to the moon before it also tipped over on landing. Intuitive Machines, the private Texas company behind it, says that means it will stop operating on Tuesday morning, much sooner than planned. A Saskatchewan family has more than 5 million reasons to pop some champagne. A box of hockey cards the family found sold at auction for close to double the predicted price. What makes the box so valuable is that it may contain dozens of Wayne Gretzky rookie cards in mint condition, though there is also a chance it doesn't contain any at all. Mike Armstrong explains.
This is it here. Here's a way to appreciate the scale of this story. This is a single package of baseball cards found earlier this year in the U.S. unopened. It's from 1952 and possibly worth about $20,000. Now, consider this find. Wow. It's the 1979-80 season of O-Pee-Chee hockey cards with 768 packages inside. It was found by a family in Regina clearing out this home office. They didn't know they had it.
Fresh as they come.
The family has chosen not to go public, but the auction house that sold the 16 boxes says the family had a viewing party Saturday, watching as the bidding went past $5 million.
We were texting them throughout the entire night, and they're floored.
This is Wayne Gretzky and Edmonton.
Now, what makes the box so valuable is that in the 79-80 season, a certain hockey legend started rewriting the record book. Wayne Gretzky was the league MVP his rookie season. Well, a Gretzky rookie card can be worth more than its weight in gold. In mint condition, they average about $150,000. In what the industry calls gem mint condition, they can sell for millions. So how about the newly discovered boxes?
If you open up this entire case, you should get somewhere between 25 and 30 Wayne Gretzky rookie cards.
Now, if you were to pick a box of cards to find from any season over the last half century, it would be the one the family found, 79-80. Wayne Gretzky's card is that important. If it had been the year before, it would have been Mike Bossy's rookie season. The year after, Ray Bourque's. Both great players, but not quite the great one, and not worth even close to $5 million.
I would imagine the 80 and the 78 case would be worth around a tenth of that.
Now, the boxes may never be opened. A lot of Gretzky rookie cards were cut off center, and instead of millions, can be worth, well, dozens. This one is actually mine, and yes, it's painful. What it means is the cards in the boxes could be worth more than $5 million or less, and we'll likely never know. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
That is Global National for this Monday. I'm Donna Friesen. We end in Calgary tonight, where Jennifer Jones wrapped up her incredible curling career. Surrounded by family, Jones received a standing ovation yesterday after her team's narrow loss in the Scotties Tournament of Hearts. She says her love of the game makes it so hard to say goodbye. She still intends to curl in mixed doubles with her husband. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.